which might sound a little bit crazy and actually might even make you throw up a little bit, or might make you deeply uncomfortable as a giver. Maybe even to have anything figured out these days is a farce. I don't know. I don't know if I'd go that far. Swoop in and save the day and say, come on, hop on my back, let's go. Welcome back to the We Heal for All podcast. My name's Liz Moyer Benferhat. It is not lost on me that you could be doing anything right now and you're choosing to be here with me. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you and welcome. Whether this is your first time here or you are returning, it means a lot to be together. In these episodes and in this space, I bring together reflections and practices and conversations for those of us who are done grieving the world alone and are ready to find our place in changing it. For those of us who know or have a sense that our own inner worlds have a relationship with the outer world. And the transformation that we seek to see more of in the world is also tied to the transformation that happens within ourselves. So what I'll be doing today, this is my July reflection piece. So it's going to be me riffing and sharing. And this topic in particular has been really alive for me for many years. I have been fortunate to have a lot of very rich, layered conversations with others about this too. And it's a task and a need that I feel is so important these days. And it's this question of becoming exquisitely skilled givers in this world. You know, the world asks a lot of us, no matter who you are. And we live in a world that has many different layers and parts to it, but also has a cultural default setting to it that is in part rooted in greed. It's rooted in extraction. It's rooted in a system that, economically speaking, is designed to prioritize self-interest. Right? We see leaders who put themselves before others all the time, to the point that we don't even bat an eye at it. We see a system that rewards the few in really big ways and marginalizes those who need us the most. And so for those of us who are naturally giving oriented, naturally service oriented, it's part of just our bread and butter. There can be this call, this pull, this almost need to compensate for all of this greedy taking that we see around us. The logic goes something like this. If the world is inherently greedy, inherently extractive, inherently me, mine, then it is my role, my job, my responsibility to be a counterforce to that. To give and to give and to give, to show up, to end up burning out, end up in unhealthy dynamics, and end up ultimately, for many of us, needing to step out from our calling to help others and to be of service of others. Because the dynamics within it, the reality of it, just becomes untenable and too hard. Now, before I go any further, I want to do a little table setting here and say that when I use the word giver or the term giver, I'm not using it in a way that's a humble brag or some kind of backhanded compliment. I'm of the firm belief that we are all different in our orientations. There are some of us who are naturally more sensitive than others, for instance, and there's research that shows us this, right? That we fall on a spectrum as people when it comes to emotional sensitivity. Dr. Elaine Aron's work on highly sensitive people tells us that 15 to 20% of the population is actually born with a trait that makes us a little bit more sensitive, have almost like an extra sensory capacity to pick up on what's going on in our environment. And I mean, we see it in sexual orientation. We see it in intelligences, right? We are all made differently, and there's a purpose for that. There's a reason for that. We're all here and made the way that we are for a reason. And so starting with that baseline acknowledgement that some of us are born with a certain orientation that leads us to want to give. And those of us who are heart-based, who are giving-oriented, I believe, have some really big, important work to do when it comes to being the healthiest version of ourselves. Right? And that's going to look different for each and every one of us. But in a world that has such a high propensity to take, those of us who are naturally called and naturally gifted at giving need to be super fucking good at it. Or else we run the risk of being swallowed whole. We run the risk of actually feeding into the unhealthy dynamics in the world that we see that we actually want to change. We run the risk of burning out and turning our backs on the very things that we love and are so naturally well positioned to do. And so this is what I want to play with today. And I do so from this humble place of pure exploration, of sharing my own journey with this and having some stories that I want to share from that. But really, the spirit of this space, the spirit of this podcast, I was actually speaking with someone recently who was interested on being a guest on the show. And he was asking, okay, so what's the vibe? What's this podcast about? If it's a more academic podcast, I can bring stats and figures. If it's more spiritual, I can bring practices. And I was thinking about it. And really this podcast, these videos, this space is very reflective of the larger body of work that I do through We Heal for All and the type of co-learning and co-exploration that I genuinely just believe that we need more of in the world. We, of course, will always need teachers who are in that position of authority and transferring information from teacher to student in a very linear, direct way. But I am of the humble and wholehearted belief that we also really need community spaces and places where we can be in the questions together. Where instead of me positioning myself as the high and mighty teacher who has all the answers, I instead sit side by side with you and say, hey, this is what's alive for me. These are the experiences that I'm having. This is the part of the elephant that I'm sensing and feeling. What part of the elephant do you sense and feel? In that spirit, in that more egalitarian, co-creative space, we can each take what resonates, leave what doesn't. We can all actually be half-baked with each other, which is the more honest and real place that we're all at anyways. We don't need to be perfect and shiny. We don't need to have it all figured out, because to have it all figured out these days is a farce. Maybe even to have anything figured out these days is a farce. I don't know. I don't know if I go that far, but you know what I'm saying. And so it's in that spirit that I dive into this with you. And it's in this spirit too, and this is what I do in my circles. right? We are all sitting together side by side, even virtually, and we share about our personal lived experiences. We share from a place of dropping the rehearsed narratives and really coming into our hearts, coming into our bodies. And we listen. We listen for resonance. We listen for points of divergence. And we practice staying emotionally connected to ourselves as we do. So that's the invitation here. I want to hear from you as well, too. What does it mean to be an exquisitely skilled giver? What does that look like for you these days? What kind of edges and work are you doing around this? Okay. So I am of the big belief that those of us who are called to be of service, who are called to helping and healing professions, who are called to be a change maker, right? And that means so many different things to so many different people. We do so because of our inner worlds, right? This isn't typically a path that people take. Of course, there is rational reasons to take different paths, to become a teacher, to whatever, what have you. But for so many of us, it is also tied to our own morals, to our own values, to our own heart's longings. And so, of course, our inner worlds are tied to then how we show up and participate in those roles as helpers and healers and change makers. And when I think about my own journey of going into international development, going into the social impact, social justice field, of being 20 and moving to Kenya, to giving so much of my time and my energy and my money, which I didn't have, to causes and issues that are really important. I think about this triangle out there, and maybe you're familiar with it, that 3 points, right, of a triangle. And the one is the victim. On the other corner is perpetrator. And on the other corner is savior. And this goes by different names. I've looked this up in the past. It goes by different names. But it's this idea that we can be stuck in thinking about the world, and we can get stuck in a lens that sees ourselves and the people around us and the larger world as either being a victim, being a perpetrator, or being a savior. And when I think to my own journey of romantic relationships, and in particular, I want to ground this in my relationship with the world, and therefore my role in taking a professional path, and not only just taking a professional path, but the way that I saw myself within that professional role. I think a lot about the savior complex. I think about my own journey of waking up to the realities of the world, waking up to injustices, and how, especially in those early years of my life, of my early years of really grappling and wrapping my head around this, the victim perpetrator framework made the most sense to me, right? It is a world full of the haves and the have-nots, the oppressed and the oppressors, right? And so within that, the other corner of that triangle is a savior, right? Someone who can swoop in and save the day and say, come on, hop on my back, let's go, right? And I don't want to totally knock this framework. Maybe if you've been joining me for other reflections and conversations, last month, I was also talking about this. I think that this framework of victim, perpetrator, savior is actually a step within a larger developmental journey. I think it can be really helpful to wake up from certain things through this framework. It can be helpful to see more clearly injustices or see more clearly abuse within your own life through this framework. But one only has to take this framework out for a spin for so long to see that it actually has limitations to it. Because the thought that I can save someone, as beautiful and tender-hearted as that might be, a question that comes with that after years of trying, years of failing, years of finding that it would get me in very sticky, unhealthy situations, is that I actually can't save people, right? I can help people. I can be of service to people if I'm invited in, if there is a mutual acknowledgement and desire from the other person, if there is actually even a balanced relationship within it, right? A balanced give and take within it. But to actually think that I can swoop in and save anyone who isn't actually asking for my help, who isn't actually, it's right, there's an arrogance within it, right? Even though again it comes from such like a, I don't want to totally knock it, for some of the beautiful qualities in it, but ultimately, right, there is an arrogance in it. Who am I to know what you need? Who am I to think that I have what you need? And so this actually makes me think of a set of mantras that I learned from spiritual teacher Rong Young, who learned from one of his teachers, Bert Hellinger. And Bert Hellinger is the founder of a healing modality called family systems constellations, or family constellations. And it's a really neat modality, if you're not familiar with it, of understanding that there is a family field within every family system. And those of us who are part of that family system can pick up on imbalances within it that even go back generations. So at the risk of going down a rabbit hole about family constellations, what Bert Hellinger taught is a set of 3 mantras or 3 sayings for empaths and for givers to really help with boundaries. So the first one goes, I am here, you are there. And the way that I was taught this practice is actually to sit with someone, sit face to face, and practice saying this out loud to this other person for yourself, right? So it starts with, I am here, you are there, which is powerful. Just even start with that. For those of us who are naturally givers, so often that natural propensity comes from our empathy, comes from our ability to sense and even absorb other people's experiences, other people's pain. So starting there with that very simple but very powerful, I am here, you are there, right? Creating that space, reclaiming that sovereignty of self, right? Even etching that out a bit energetically and internally. So, okay, that's the first one. The second one is, that's your story, that's not mine. That's your story, that's not mine. So that's giving back that person's story. Those of us who are givers, we can be really affected by how other people think about us. We can be really affected by how other people experience the world, other people's stories. Our compassion can flow outwards in a way where our own needs and sense of self can get very clouded because we're also holding and sensing and are aware of the needs and stories of other people. In my view, it's not about shutting off that compassion or shutting off and turning away from other people's experiences and needs. It's more about finding the right orientation within ourselves to be able to appropriately hold that information and that awareness. It could even be, and this is what's coming to me right now, about a reorientation internally, a reorientation internally where I as giver, I as individual, I as Liz, reorient where I sit internally within myself. If I think about my internal world being able to hold and carry multitudes and hold and carry so much stuff, right? I can hold and carry feelings of hunger in my body. I can hold and carry feelings of sadness or anxiety in my chest. I can hold and carry the memory of brushing my teeth this morning. I can hold and carry the conversation that I had with my partner before he left for work. And so when it comes to a relationship, when it comes to a situation, when it comes to, let's say, being at work and working with a client, and or being in a challenging relationship with a family member where you are aware and absorbing their realities, right? Their perspectives, their side of what's happening and going on. It becomes especially important to figure out how to arrange your inner home, if you will. Where does that sit within you? Can you find a way to really strengthen, fortify, and secure your own home base internally? And for me, that sits right at the center of my heart. And that is something that I've been cultivating through meditation for years. For so long, the spiritual visualization practices that I would do around boundaries, when, I would feel a lot of energy and feel very other people's energy, that is, and feel really distracted by it, or feel it like tugging and pulling at different parts of my internal world. For a long time, I would try to push that out. It would be a lot of an external orientation in terms of my spiritual practice, in terms of the energetic work I was doing around it. Maybe you're familiar with this one of like cutting cords. So really imagining cutting like a scissors, a pair of big, shiny scissors, just cutting cords all around. And while these techniques helped in some ways, what I found is that I was still extending myself outward. And what I've actually found to be more useful and fruitful for me is actually fortifying myself inward. Getting really super clear about who I am and where I sit within myself. That's even making me take a breath. Instead of, and there's something kind of interesting in it, those practices of, like putting a salt boundary around my aura, right, to like expel energy outwards. It's still very other focused, right? It's trying to control, or I'm going to use the word manipulate, which, I have all sorts of baggage around, and it can kind of be a strong word, but it's about trying to change energy outside of me, right? Which honestly, now that I'm saying this out loud, makes me think about the savior complex thing, thinking that I have some kind of power to change others, even if it's just energetically, like other energies. And, maybe we do, maybe we don't. What I've personally found is that, and even as I say, it feels thinner to me. It feels like I'm more exhausted, even in thinking about those kind of techniques and practices. So instead, for me, it's been about grounding myself in my heart center. It's about sitting in the seat of my heart, my spiritual heart, and finding solace there, finding strength there, returning to there in my meditation through my breath. And so this second mantra of that's your story, that's not mine, speaks to that. It speaks to putting things in the right place, right? Having a place for everything. I see your story, I hear it, and I welcome it, not welcome it, whatever, right? I acknowledge that it exists, but it's not mine, right? You are absolutely welcome to have that story by all means, but my story is over here. It's inside me. right? I'm clear on what my story is. And if I'm not clear about what my story is, I take time to sort it out, right? I take time to sit with it, to contemplate, to process sticky, icky, challenging, confusing feelings that are caught within it. So, and then the third mantra, and I am going to butcher the actual verbiage of it. I actually just tried to look it up and I couldn't find it. But it's the most interesting one for me. And it goes something like this: I offer myself until I'm no longer wanted. Or I offer myself in service until I'm no longer wanted. Oof. I offer myself until I'm no longer wanted, right? And this is one where those other two, like I just felt so viscerally, kind of hit and landed so palpably. This was one that I was like, whoa, yeah, right? This is one to sit with and to chew on and to contemplate. Because what I hear in it, and I'm curious what you hear in it, I'm curious what it brings to mind and brings up for you. But what I hear in it is I show up, I offer, but I don't go where I'm not wanted or needed. I don't try to save you or save others. It's not appropriate. It's not healthy. And it's not what's needed. Taking a breath with it. Because I think so many of us who are givers and are alive and attuned to what's going on in the world these days, we are compelled, right? We are morally compelled to change things, to fix things, to be of service in some way, shape, or form. And there is some really rich tension in that. There are some really complicated questions in that when it's taken to certain extremes. Now, I'm not saying don't participate in these times by any means. If you know me even a little bit, you know that's not what I'm saying. But I think those of us who are driven by the fire of our hearts, the fire of our bellies, the world being on fire, we can give and give and give to no avail. We can spin out. We can go into hyperdrive and just pour everything into what we're doing. And we can end up getting lost. We can end up getting hurt, and we can end up hurting others. And again, turning our backs on the very thing that we feel called to do. And so this question around right relationship with giving, right relationship with the world, even this question of, can the world be saved? Can we save the world? Right? Thinking about those slogans and those bumper stickers out there. Save the world. Our generation has to save the world. I mean, I'm a millennial, so, that's such like a youth campaign slogan, you know what I mean? But I think actually even millennials, there's a real narrative around being like a bridge generation. And once again, as I say this, and this is the beauty of this work and the beauty of the questions of becoming skilled givers or becoming the people that we are called to be in challenging times, whether that's in our families, in our communities, in the world at large. It's about identifying those tensions and playing with them, sitting in them, allowing them to reveal things. Because that spirit, the spiritedness of wanting to save the world is worthwhile. But then what's even more worthwhile, in my view, in my opinion, is grounding that spiritedness in a set of tools in a way of being, in community support that can actually sustain it. And so that may mean bringing that spiritedness down to earth, giving it some doses of sober reality, and even having that spiritedness sit with questions like, what if the world doesn't change for the better? Can I still keep showing up? What if this system that I work in, whether it's the mental health field or, housing or, environmental sustainability, what if I never see the fruits of my labor? What if I never, I just even got chills. What if I never see the fruits of this movement in this sector's vision of what's possible? Is it still worth participating? And actually, I'm not even going to I'm going to sidebar that one. Can I still participate? Can I still participate even if I don't see the fruits within my lifetime? That's some deep stuff right there. And it requires at least what I feel within myself and feel within my own journey of sitting with these questions. It requires some letting go. It requires moving away for me from that victim, perpetrator, savior triangle towards something that is much more nuanced. It's much more complex. It's much less good guy, bad guy, cop knight riding in on a shiny unicorn to save everyone, right? It's more about systems. It's more about interdependence. It's more about being very aware of my own edges, my own gifts, my own strengths, my own limitations, my own needs, and showing up and participating in a way that honors that, as well as plugs me in and positions me. I was going to say to be of service, but really just participate, right? For my own moral consciousness, which is part of my need. I sometimes think those of us who are giving oriented, one of the healthiest reorientations we can do is ground what we do within a self-centeredness, which might sound a little bit crazy and actually might even make you throw up a little bit or might make you deeply uncomfortable as a giver. Because so much of our orientations is towards other. And for many of us, and I'll just ground it in my own personal experience, centering other has been a way to stay safe. Centering other people's needs, other people's stories, other people's wants was a way I survived. It was a coping mechanism of sorts. If you're happy, I'm happy, right? If I can morph myself to be who you want and need me to be, then I'm a little bit more likely to get my needs met. I'm a little bit more likely to stay safe, quote unquote. But at the risk of what? At the risk of not actually being myself. At the risk of not knowing who I am. At the risk of actually not participating in the relationship, not actually voicing my wants or my needs. And therefore getting hurt. Therefore actually being just in unhealthy dynamics. And so here we are in this ripe time as a people, as a culture, as a world. I mean, that's where I go. I zoom out big. That's just kind of my natural propensity. But even within your family, within your relationships, within your sense of self, We are at a time that is so ripe because there's so much going on. So much going on that's awesome and powerful, and so much going on that is scary and uncertain. And so here we are really being asked and pushed and nudged to keep getting clear about who we are and what we need, to keep cleaning up our own side of the street, because when we do, we're more likely to make sure that that other side of the street is in check too. When we are in unhealthy giving habits, we are more likely to allow unhealthy taking habits from others. And so the more we can clean up our own side of the street, the more our presence becomes of service to our communities, to our families, to our relationships, to our world. And it is far from straightforward, but it is a noble task. And I don't use that word lightly. I'm not being hyperbolic here, but it really is. So I've got so much more to say on this, but I think I'm going to pause there. I would love to hear and know what you think. I would love to know what's alive for you around this topic of giving, of being a giver. And yeah, I hope to see you back here with me for the practice this month, as well as the conversation and beyond. From my home to yours, I'm sending you so much love. All right, be well. Thank you to you and your heart and for being here. If you enjoyed this episode and received from it, send it to a friend and use it as a way to build community and connection that this world deeply needs right now. Subscribe to tune in each week for more tools, conversations, and support on collective healing. And check out my latest book, When the World Hurts, upcoming circles, and online courses to go deeper. Sending you love from the Bronx. Take care.